Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Saco School Board Committee meeting for Wednesday, January 8th at 7 p.m. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so that moves us to item number 3 this evening, and that is the approval of the school board minutes dated December 11th, 2024. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor,
School Board Member Truman?
I move we approve the school board meeting minutes dated December 11th, 2024.
Right, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Johnston. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Warnoff?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion on the minutes passes 7-0. Okay, that now moves us to item number 4, and that is adjustments to the agenda. Is there a motion?
I'd like to move section 14, the executive session, to item 4 on the agenda and enter into executive session for labor contract negotiations pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 405(6)D.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Johnston. Roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion to move the item to item 4 and enter into executive session passes 7-0. So we will be downstairs in the conference room at 7:02.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome back. Is there a motion to exit executive session?
Madam Mayor,
School Board Member Truman?
I move we exit executive session.
Second.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to exit executive session. Is there a report?
No report.
Thank you. Okay, that now moves us on to item number 5, and that is correspondence this evening. There are no correspondence. Item number 6 is public session. If you wish to address the school board, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, not seeing anyone seeking any recognition, moves us on to item number 8. Where are we? Item number 8, and that is the superintendent's report.
Okay, good evening, everyone. First is a kind of a big congratulations to Saco Middle School for being named one of 6 Maine State finalists among 3,000 schools nationwide for the 15th annual Samsung Solve for Tomorrow competition. You might remember that from last year, that we're back again. This one is actually one that is really interesting to me because the 8th grade group project is to create a prototype lobster buoy that monitors temperatures for climate change, pH levels, and pollutants. Lindsay Gerard and the 8th grade students received a $2,500 prize package and will now advance to the state finals. Last year, Saco was named Maine State winner in this contest for the 100% biodegradable refillable markers. But boy, I love this lobster buoy one. I'm interested, and I hope they have some prototypes because I know who they can go fishing with. We'll do that. I think I said this last time, but just wanted to thank Biddeford Saco Rotary Club and businesses throughout the area who supported 177 families and students throughout the communities during the holidays for gifts. When you kind of walked through central office those days, I was a little worried because the pathway was getting so small. But it was really amazing to see what people in our communities do to make sure that others have. I will also, on a budget note, we've started the budget process. I hope to be starting reviews with building leaders and principals next week, but I did talk with Paulette Bono, who's on the state board and the director at the vocational center. And they did announce today that the mill rate expectation, so if you're thinking page 4 of the 279 where it says how many mills you had to raise this year, it's 6.62. That is dropping to 6.1 in the next budget. That's a really good thing if that happens for us, because communities that have higher valuation as that mill rate drops and more money is put into the formula, kind of shifts it to those communities that have more of a mill rate. So between that piece and the fact that I've been working with Marshall, that we will have a bill in around homeless weight on page 2 at 0.5, and we also have been working with Representative Cloutier, who is sponsoring a bill for economically disadvantaged at 0.25 weight. That could be really beneficial to us during the budget season. Some important numbers that you definitely need to know about is when we presented to you the number of ELL students on October 1, there was 243. We have gained 40 students since October 1 in the ELL category. At that time, we were talking about 2 ed techs, and right now, Meg and I are kind of working on a plan that we'll talk about either at the next meeting, is that I don't know that 2 ed techs is going to do it for the year, we may, because we're having trouble finding ed techs, that we may need to look at teachers in those positions. I think that's something that we need to watch because this has grown so rapidly for us. We're going to need to have some budget requests for additional staff for those students in our budget when we bring that forward. Also, just so that you guys know, is that continuing to monitor class sizes, especially at Burns School, has been where we've really seen some increases. I'd say most classrooms are around 23 students. 23 students is outside the range that I would ideally want. We're building a new school based off 20 students in a classroom. And as you know, space is very limited at Burns School. And so we're just going to do some homework about what other options so that in case things continue to rise, that we don't want to have the problem with no solution during the budget process. We would like to have some solutions and options for you guys to think about. But I did talked with Jen in the office, and just so that you know, is that I will be sending letters to all families who have students who superintendent's agreements in to explain to them that for next year, those may not be renewed based off the fact of space. We need to make sure that we are serving Saco kids' best interests first in these scenarios. And certainly there's sometimes some tough things around childcare and other factors, but 23 to 25 kids is not what we want. And so we're going to continue to do some work and monitor those pieces. We also know that the population at Young School seems to have grown, just started to be a little bit more unbalanced than from Fairfield School. And I think through the budget process, as we kind of hone in on those numbers and learn more about kindergarten, we're going to have some conversations around, do lines need to have to change? No one wants to do that, but we certainly don't want to have 24 kids sitting in a classroom if we had 18, let's say, in another school. We just got to make sure there's balance. We've got to have greater conversations about those as we come through the process this spring. So just wanted to put those on your radar screen because those could be some very heavy issues for us to talk about.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Superintendent Ray? I would like to just add to your comments regarding the legislative bills going in. We actually just had a meeting with the mayors and Senator Rondo and one of the representatives from the Appropriations Committee. When those bills come forward, we're keeping sharp eye on them, and there will be opportunity for public hearing. And so anyone, we have great lobbyists that back those bills for us, but as a collective group, it certainly is beneficial for them to hear from the representatives of the school. So between Jeremy and I, we can keep you informed of when those public hearings. You don't always have to go to Augusta. There is an online option to voice your support for those bills. So once those come forward, hopefully we'll have a great opportunity to get our voices in behind them.
Yeah, and one of the great things that Meg does for the York County Superintendent's Association is Meg is on the legislative committee, and they meet every week to go over what's coming up, what's the stance on it, has the updated language, and she's able, it's great because she can disseminate that to us. I've also, we had conversations with building leaders yesterday about the importance of building leaders, making sure they're available for testimony. And certainly when these come up, I would welcome you guys. And while it is great on Zoom and it is great for a letter, nothing is more important than the in-person testimony that you can give. And one of our goals as administrators is to make sure that everybody on the administrative team gets an opportunity to testify in person on a bill that they are passionate about. And I think that the experiences that our principals have had with the increase in disadvantaged students and the homelessness is something that they could be very passionate about because classrooms are different when half of the students come from a disadvantaged background, or if 4 or 5 kids are not living at home, it's a different scenario.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so that moves us on to item 8, and that is the chair's report. Chair Preble.
I don't have anything new to report this evening, but thank you.
Great, thank you. Item number 9 is staff reports, and we have no staff reports this evening. Item number 10 is the board subcommittee minutes. Item A is the Policy and Personnel Committee. Agenda is attached in a memo. The next meeting is February 12th at 5:30. Item B is the Finance and Infrastructure Committee. Next meeting is January 22nd at 4:30. Item number C is the Curriculum Committee, and the next meeting is January 27th at 4:30. Okay, taking us to item 11, that is, there is no old business this evening. Item number 12 is new business, and there is a memo in your packet for new hires, but there is no motion needed this evening. Item B is resignations. Is there a motion for resignations?
Madam Mayor,
School Board Member Truman?
I move we accept the resignation of Shaylin Dreipolcher, District BCBA, effective at the end of the 2024-25 school year.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Johnston. Any discussion on the item? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff?
Yes?
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, the next item is item C, and that is a bar presentation.
Thank you. I'm going to get us started before I pass this off to Principal Susi. Upon reflecting on this before we did share the bar presentation with our curriculum committee, and the curriculum committee felt like it would be important to get an overview and update for the full board on some of this work. However, I want to kind of back up just a little bit and explain the larger umbrella under which BAR is. BAR is a social emotional curriculum and network of supports for students, which Marie will dive into a little bit. And it's working in conjunction with some of the academic work that we're doing around curriculum, where our focus this year at Saco Middle School in particular is to really work on creating, revising, collaborating with teams of teachers and our 6-8 vertical teams to have outwardly facing external curriculum documents so that there's more clarity for parents and community members around exactly what the academic scope and sequence looks like for students in each content area. That work has been done in a lot of different ways internally over the years, but with all of those variations over time, we don't necessarily have real clarity in what a good outward-facing, parent-friendly, student-friendly version of that work looks like. I also want to commend Marie and the teachers at Saco Middle School because implementing BAR is a heavy lift. It required quite a bit of professional development time over the summer. It requires working with a coach pretty regularly, which she'll get into. It requires shifting, changing what you're doing some things that you maybe have never done before, doing things out of advisory that you used to just do in advisory so that students who maybe don't connect with their advisory teacher have an opportunity to connect with a social studies teacher or a science teacher or an ELA teacher that might not be their advisor. And so there have been quite a lot of shifts and changes that have required flexibility on the part of staff, and I'm hopeful that we continue to move in a direction where we shift and adjust in order to make sure that our students feel seen, heard, understood, and connected to one another. And as a final point, I just want to say, even though I've kind of put these in 2 columns, these are not mutually exclusive items. It is not social emotional learning or curriculum or academic curriculum. They really are kind of a yin and yang with one another, because if students aren't connected to the teachers that they're working with, then we can't ask them to do hard things or present them with challenging topics or understand what they're really passionate about to dive into academically. and vice versa. If we don't spend time really getting to know students, then the academics don't really mean as much to them in the long run. So I'm going to pass it off to Marie now, who's going to really give you a little bit more of an in-depth, though not as long as curriculum committee, overview of what BAR means and what that looks like in the course of a student and teacher day.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. Marie Susi, principal at Saco Middle School. So I'm going to give you some information about BAR and then tell you how it kind of looks and feels at Saco Middle School. So BAR stands for Building Assets, Reducing Risk. And there are two pillars to the BAR model. They are relationships and data. And I think we all know educators are inherently good at building relationships with students. And then we always have these data available to us. What this does is really help us capitalize on our relationships with students, use the data, figure out what do students need, and then provide those interventions for them. So we were fortunate enough last spring to be accepted into a grant program through the Maine Department of Education to allow us to bring the BAR model to our school. There are, at this point, over 100 Maine schools now implementing it through the Maine grant, and BAR fits nicely with the Maine DOE's vision of educating the whole child. So the nice thing about this is a flexible approach. It is not a program, it's a model where you can tailor it to the assets and needs of your particular school community. It can be customized for any grade level or any different school or class. There's elementary models and middle and high school models as well. So the grant provides us with a 3-year implementation process, and as part of that, there is a coach that comes with this to help us through the process. There are a few links there to videos if you have time and are interested that'll bring you to some information on some Maine schools that are implementing it, and as well just a longer explanation or more in depth about the BAR model. So there are 8 interlocking strategies to this model that are here, focusing on the whole student, as I mentioned. Professional development, we did over the course of the summer and then into the fall, have almost half of our teachers trained on this model. There's I-time curriculum, which I'll get into, cohorts of students, regular teacher meetings, conducting risk review meetings, engaging families in student learning, and engaging administrators. And I have this quote, and I know you're not supposed to read from slides, but I am going to because I feel like it's powerful, from a BAR educator who says, grades are a good indicator of how a student is doing, but if you just look at grades, you miss a lot of things. Social changes, friendship changes, attendance, health. All of a sudden, a student is getting too skinny. It's like a puzzle, and everybody holds a piece to the puzzle. So when we are together, we can see the whole kid. And I think as teachers, it's easy to get into a groove. You're working on your lessons, and you're providing curriculum and teaching, and then you miss these little things. But coming together as a group of teachers and talking about kids and talking about their strengths and what we see, we really can focus in on what each particular student needs. So BAR, it's really important to note that is an evidence-based program. Everything that they do is based on evidence that they've collected. It has a substantial impact on teacher attitudes. So you can see the view of students' actual behavior, teachers' use of data, self-efficacy, and collaboration and view of colleagues. The nice thing about BAR is that it's about relationships, it's about building relationships with your students, but it's also staff and staff relationships. So it helps us build relationships with our colleagues. Has a sizable impact on students' experience and engagement, so engagement, expectations, and rigor, and supportive relationships, and academic outcomes. As Meg pointed out, relationships, social-emotional pieces are very interconnected with the curriculum, and the better relationships that we have with students, the better the curriculum or academic outcomes are. So BAR has shown to significantly reduce course failures. All students, of course, but then students of color and students in poverty mostly show some great improvements. It's really early on for us at this point to say what kind of impact it's had, but we are happy to report that we have been tracking student attendance, and since the beginning of school, the number of students who are missing 10% of days in school has reduced from 16% to 9% in the sixth grade population. So there is one piece there, it's like, okay, we can see improvements. Small but significant impact on NEWA scores. So the key components of the BAR model is the ongoing professional development. As I said, our teachers are all trained, and we're going to continue with that training in the upcoming years. We are provided a BAR coach who has taught before and has used the model, and now she works for BAR as a coach. In our school, our guidance counselor, Elaine Provencher, is our BAR coordinator. So she coordinates the BAR implementation efforts, and she mostly meets with the BAR coach. So the coach actually flies out to us 4 times a year, sits in on our team meetings, and then provides us with written feedback from what she sees and how we can improve our efforts. She also has weekly calls with both the BAR coordinator and myself. The cohorts are our teams, and then we have block meetings, which are, we're going to refer to them as small meetings, small block and big block, and then we have community connect meetings, which I'll get into. So the block meeting system. The really great thing about middle school and our structure is that we had a lot of stuff in place. So our teachers have the time to meet together as a team. So small block meetings are weekly team meetings in which you look at student data. And I'm just going to show you this spreadsheet that's used. Sorry. I thought that was just going to pop right up. Okay. This, because I feel like it's really a powerful tool, and the visual will help you see. Each team has a spreadsheet like this one, which has every student on their team listed. And as you can imagine, when we get together as teachers, we're mostly focused on students who are struggling, right? And we're talking about the same students over and over again. This model forces us to touch upon every single student that we see. So the students are listed over here on the left, and we always start with student strengths. So building assets. So the first thing we do is fill in, what are these student strengths? And what are their connections to school? So if we know this student is in choir, has some great friends, connects well with Mrs. Noble, we're gonna put that down there, loves STEM class. Then when the student's starting to have trouble, we're gonna go back to those strengths, and we're gonna go back to the connections to school and say, hey, Mrs. Noble, we really need you to help Jane Doe because she's struggling right now. So starting with the strengths and the connections is the important piece here. Then we're gonna list the date we talk about these students, the level of concerns, looking at their grades, we're looking at their attendance. So we have all this data in front of us to now drive our conversation. So we're not just spinning our wheels, having those same conversations over and over again. So during these meetings, the team teachers sit down, and we're bringing all the people to the table that see these students. So then, thank you, that worked well. When students need more support, we bring them to what we call our big block meeting, and that's when we bring in additional support. And then we also have our Community Connect meeting that includes more specialized staff, it includes administration, social workers, the nurse, all the people. So when students really need some extra support, they're gonna go to the Community Connect meeting. We have implementation phases right now in which not all of our teams are going through the structured block meetings. We do have one team per grade level who has volunteered to do that. So for this year, the meeting system is just a pilot in each grade per se, and then we're gonna get into every team doing that next year. What we do all do right now is the iTime curriculum. And so Meg mentioned our advisory classes. So for those of you who are unaware, we have advisory once a week. This is the small group of students that each teacher is assigned to, 10 to 12 students that they see every day, both in the morning and afternoon homerooms, but there is one dedicated advisory period for these students, and it is built into the schedule for building relationships. So when we took on the BAR model, we already had that in place. So we currently have been using that advisory time for the curriculum. And the nice thing is everyone in the school is using the same curriculum. We have this spreadsheet that our coordinator, Elaine Provencher, created. So teachers just have to look, here's the date, the topic. So starts with building communities at the beginning of the year. Then they go into like setting goals for students. This past week, students had a lesson on communication and the difference between positive, negative, and neutral communication. And when you have an interaction with someone else, how can you make it positive, negative, or neutral? So then teachers, all they have to do, click on this, and there's a whole lesson plan included for every week for this advisory time and the I time. This is the really important piece for when teachers are getting to know their students. The stuff that you learn in the I time about your students is what is then you're going to take into your meetings and say, well, I remember that Johnny shared with me that, you know, this is happening right now at home, and so that's probably why his grades are, you know, failing. So that's really important information. As Meg mentioned, part of the BAR model is not only providing this curriculum in the advisory time, but also in the core classes, so that I, as a math teacher, get to see all the students on my team in a different light. I get to build relationships in a different way than just providing math curriculum. And then the students get to build relationships with me in a different way. And so now we're moving into a phase where we're cycling through, they're getting the I-time curriculum and the relationship building with their core classroom teachers. And that's essentially where we're at right now. Like I said, it's a 3-year implementation process. The I-time curriculum is the focus this year in really engaging students and teachers in those advisory lessons and building the relationships.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for Principal Susi? School Board Member Warnoff?
Do the students keep the same advisory group through 6, 7, and 8?
They do not. So they keep that's a good question. They change in 7th grade. So they also change teams. So there's different team groupings, and they may not be with all the same kids on a team. So then when they get into 7th grade, there's a new team and a new advisory group.
Thank you. Anyone else? School Board Member Roach?
You said the block system is beta testing, right?
Yes.
Right now, but the I time is definitely every student is participating in
Every
this?
student, yes. And right now, every student in the building is getting the same lesson. So it's all done on Monday. Every student is getting the same lesson.
You said it was like 10 to 12 students in a group?
Yes.
So how is that divided? You know,
So those are their advisory groups. They're already naturally divided up that way into homeroom. So every morning, students go to their homeroom. They have a homeroom teacher, and those are small groups. So most teachers in the building have a homeroom and an advisory. There's very few that do not.
But is a homeroom like 20 kids in a homeroom, or is
Nope,
it
just the 10 to 12. Yep.
Okay, all right.
Okay, anyone else? Great, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for this, and also just speaking personally from someone who's had 2 kids go through middle school. They're tough years since 2012. I know there's going to be problems, but you're doing a great job. So please keep up this path, and you know, any hurdles or, you know, please bring it up through Jeremy or whatever. This is great stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. We appreciate that update. Okay, next item on the agenda this evening is item D, and that is the TA tuition mat, fiscal year 26 projections.
Okay. Well, Marie gets the exciting stuff. Now we're going to talk a little money. So just wanted to, in December, you know, each year a community who pays maximum allowable tuition to a private school, that number comes out what you're going to pay. And the increase this year, last year was 5.6%. The increase this year is 5.87%. So you went from paying $13.3 per student to $14.80 per student. In addition, we send $985.66, or 7%, for insured value factor. We knew that we had planned for 890 students, which has been, we've planned for that for several years in a row, and then we saw a large increase this year. And so the top kind of reddish pink section is what we had in the budget of 15,972. The purplish section is based off the increase of the number of students and and the tuition cost, also factoring in special education, what we get for a bill on that, because we have to estimate a little bit of where we're going to be. And we're going to be at 15,931, so we're going to have a little bit of wiggle room. We're okay, but we got a little bit of wiggle room there. What I then wanted to make sure that you guys looked at, because as we'll be starting off the budget process, is if we look at, you know, I don't know that I'd feel comfortable going back to 890 students next year, and, you know, 920 might be a little bit too short of we might have to estimate a little bit more. Leaving our special education of what we have currently in the budget, knowing that we have ML, and then I will be making some recommendations on how we spread additional resources for ML, and I think this is one area based off the numbers we may need to add a little bit of staff. Fourth Horton Academy that you would see a new number of 17.2. So as we kind of start the budget process based off the 9 through 12 side, you're looking at almost a $1.3 million increase in those numbers alone. So I just wanted to get that information out to you now that it was finalized, and this was our first meeting since the finalization of that, so that we can be prepared for budget season.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, moving on to item E, and that is a building update. A is the playground feedback and design. A little happier note.
Well, you know.
This is my ED 279, because I get really excited about this. Jeremy gets really excited about
fun
ED
and positive.
279. Well, I don't know if you want to give other building updates before I jump into this, or if you want me to give any.
Go ahead, Meg.
Okay.
Let you share the positive stuff.
I'm going to jump in with the playground stuff, and then I'll backtrack to some of the other stuff that we've been working on. So as I shared, Jeremy and I shared with the board a little while ago, we had an opportunity to meet with the landscape architects and CK Burns students and get their feedback about the playground. So it's a really cool opportunity for students to have some input, and I wanted to just share with you today the results of that work. In the top right corner, you kind of see the elementary building, which will have 2 playgrounds, and then our primary school will have some as well. So all of our 5th graders were able to participate in a live presentation with the landscape architects, kind of presenting the project and some of the options for equipment and play spaces. 3rd and 4th graders then had access to a recorded presentation because we didn't have the capacity to provide that live presentation for the whole school. We had 267 students respond via survey to provide feedback on the playground structures and design, and that's a little photo of cramming 3 classes into the library space, which really emphasized our choices around presentation spaces in the new building, because we will have space to do an audiovisual presentation for an entire grade in those new buildings. So the first question we asked students was to take a look at climbing structures, and the winner was the jungle dome model. I do want to point out that the pictures are helping to inspire the design and the elements that we finally land on. So we're not definitely purchasing this exact dome. We still have a lot of budgeting to do, but it gives the architects some direction in terms of what should go where. Next, we had the swings, and I've actually had an opportunity to see the one that was voted highest. It's in Camden Rockport play area, which is a Viking swing that has a big rope in the center, and you can fit multiple kids on it at the same time to kind of go back and forth. The top 5 current playground activities as rated by students were soccer, spinners, swings, basketball, and the slide. And the most requested items fit into kind of 2 broad categories. One was motion equipment, typo there, but zip lines, spinners, and tire swings. and then sports areas, including larger soccer fields than are currently at CK Burns, basketball court areas, and a gaga pit, which is kind of a gentler variation on dodgeball played with a kind of balls below the knees in a little pit that's outside game. In looking at larger structures, which will go on one of the playgrounds, the favorite of the three large play structures with 56% of the vote was this one that you see on the left there, which fits in nicely with some of the themes that our group discussed today. And then the favorite spinning element received 44% of the vote. That was a little bit closer in the vote, but that element there allows multiple kids to get on the same equipment and also has kind of an offset spinning. So another exciting component of this is that we have more than just the playgrounds when we're looking at outdoor spaces. We have one enclosed courtyard in the elementary school, as well as an outdoor rooftop classroom. And in the primary school, we have 2 courtyards, one of which will be enclosed and one of which will be open to the elementary school. In the top left corner of this, you'll see the 2 courtyards that will be part of the primary school. The one on the right is the one that is next to the elementary school, and that will be more of like an outdoor eating, hardscaped type area. And the one on the left will be more of an enclosed space where if you need some adaptive equipment for students or some outdoor OT, PT type activities, that can happen there. And in the very top left, you'll see some kind of raised bed plantings that will be in that courtyard. Below that, you'll see the design for the primary playground, and we'll get a little bit closer in terms of each of those. So in the elementary school, there's a forest playground. That's the one that's kind of located on that top right side that will then eventually have that trail that connects down through the Eastern Trail. There will be a hill slide feature on this playground, as well as 4 square, some basketball hoops that are not in a traditional basketball court setting, but an ability to kind of shoot around with friends. This is where we'll have that larger climbing structure for students, a tire swing, and some other, that kind of Viking swing element will be there, as well as the gaga pit. We'll also be able to later further kind of expand this with potentially some areas that are more wooded or some outdoor classrooms that you can get to from this play space. The meadow playground is a little bit more of a traditional playground that's in the front of the school and abuts, by distinction of a fence, the parking lot in the front. There's a large soccer field on the far left that's not pictured in this picture that will be a full U10 soccer field, so it will be like kind of the regulation soccer field that these kids are playing on, which will be something that they don't have access to currently at CK Burns. 2 full basketball courts and then a multi-purpose field, as well as a whole slew of swings, and then that like larger structure with some 2 different types of access to spinners on that playground. The primary playground is kind of divided into 2 different areas, though we opted to put a fence around the entire thing rather than 2 separate fenced areas. And those 2 areas are then kind of connected on that outside component with a bike track, because that's one of the favorite activities between scooters and trikes of our pre-K students, to get some of that gross motor activity outside. I won't go through all of the different elements here, but the elements on the primary playground are, of course, much smaller in nature and less kind of larger structures that are interconnected, but more kind of standalone components, things where kids can practice balance, climbing under, over, and we also talked about the balance between staff being able to see all students, but also kind of creating cozy nook areas where kids can play in smaller groups, more pretend and imaginative play at this level. Some of the other things that have been going on, and then I'll let Jeremy add if he has other information. Off-site improvements are a big one that we've had some pretty regular meetings on. A lot of that is over my head, but I am learning quite a bit about relocation of telephone poles and lighting structures and curb cuts. And all of that work is proceeding pretty nicely with the help of Goral Palmer and just kind of keeping us posted on conversations with CMP and when different permits can be pulled for some of those off-site improvements. And then the other component that's really exciting that I hope to be able to present in a little bit more final format in the future is our theme team that has met on 3 different occasions. Today was our last meeting, and that group was a pretty diverse group of Saco residents that kind of helped us determine what elements of Saco should help inspire the design. And without giving away all of the finer details, which I can share at a later point, the team really focused on highlighting the natural elements and also highlighting the diversity of environments that exist in Saco, from the ocean and the beachfront to the Saco River to an industrial downtown to meadows, farmlands, fields, and how we can kind of play out those different components in the design in a way that kind of shows the graduation of those different components in Saco and the way that they play off of one another. Anything else to add, Superintendent Ray?
Well, I'm going to now talk about interest and bond structure. So, yes, I actually am going to talk about that. One of the things that you guys are going to see in this upcoming budget is that based off, as you know, we are in the initial piece where you take out a band or a bond anticipation note, but you have to start paying interest on that piece. That in the next budget, we will have an interest payment of about, I think it's like $1.1 million that starts on that piece. But we will be getting money from the state on that, okay? So one of the things that I want to caution you guys about, and people in the public, is that when the ED 279 comes out, and you're gonna see, hopefully, this extra $1.5 million so dollars that comes in subsidy, and people will say to you, oh, Saco did so well, you got all this extra money. We need to remind people that there's an expenditure that's equal to that piece. So a lot of time, the next year, you'll be doing a principal and an interest payment, and so that number is going to jump up into like the $4.5 million range. So what happens is a lot of times at schools, people will go through the spreadsheet of the increases and decreases on 279, and they'll say, well, why did Saco get $4.5 million more than the next city did, not knowing that this is all around state construction funding. So just, I want to make sure people are prepared for that piece, because you also, from an expenditure side of things, will have people in the public that will see the budget number going up and say, well, why is this going up so much? You were only at this level last year. And it's important for us to talk more about, yes, the construction project and the payments and the money coming back from the state is starting in the next year's budget in this process. So I think that's an important piece for you and for the city council to understand, because inevitably in a couple of years when you're receiving that payment, is at $4 to $5 million, and you're receiving that from the state, someone's going to say, what happened with spending when your budget was $52 million, and now in 2 years' time, it's at $58 million, and just making sure that we're clear about, yes, we're also getting more subsidy because we have a state project. When we put, this won't happen this time around in this budget and the other time around, but when you are looking at your budgets, you will see a principal payment and an interest payment for the state-funded portion, which you'll see a revenue that comes for, but then you'll also see a line that has a principal and interest payment for the local portion. So there'll be two pieces in your budget that you pay for so that people understand this is the local piece of it, this is the state piece of it, and there's this much revenue that comes in. Take any questions on that piece.
Okay, great. Any questions for Superintendent Ray? Comments?
You're trying to scare people, aren't you? You're trying to scare the new school board members too, right? That 279 spreadsheet is epic, so.
Love it.
Just can't wait for it, so.
It's my Super Bowl. It's my Super Bowl.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Okay, thanks, Megan. Okay, item number F is the Social Security Fairness Act. Superintendent Ray, you got an update on that?
Yeah, so over vacation, or around the holidays it was, I'd sent some emails and you'd seen a lot of probably press around this, where there were 13 states where public employees that were on the teaching side of things could not access their full Social Security benefit. And Susan Collins was actually a real champion for this at the federal level. And our educators and our staff need to be thankful for that piece, because we had employees who had worked in Social Security but was taking a 40% reduction on their benefit on retirement because they were a member of Maine State Retirement, even though they paid into it. And while that necessarily, you say, well, okay, so how does that, impact us as a school department? That has major impacts on us from a hiring standpoint. We know that hiring can be challenging, and if you are somebody who worked 20 years in a career that paid into Social Security and then said, you know what, I want to go teach, that pathway really wasn't there because you might have put enough time into Maine State Retirement that now you would get a reduction from what you had on the Social Security end. Additionally, teachers who lived in other states, and it was interesting as this was going along, I was following a couple of Facebook pages from different organizations that were, teachers groups that would, and, stories of people who, I moved to the Northeast not understanding that I came from a state and I have just enough time in retirement that now I get this elimination. And so it's really an important piece, and I'm thankful that we were able to do this for Maine educators, because this certainly changes, a couple $100 a month in retirement more is a big difference for people. I think what my advice would be, and we continue to send out information throughout the school department, but I definitely would encourage all staff members to log into, Social Security might not have been in their minds, to log in, make sure that if you log into Social Security, you can pull up how many quarters you have. And there may be people who worked a lot as a teenager or a young adult and then was in teaching and hasn't worked a lot in Social Security. You may say, hey, look, I'm only 3 or 4 quarters away from getting some sort of benefit, or knowing what your benefit is. And so we'll continue to push out things to staff, but want to encourage them, because this was a big win for Maine educators, and very thankful to Susan Collins and Senator King for all the work that they did on this.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? I have a question just for clarification on that too. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that it also benefits the fact of survivor benefits is the larger piece.
Correct, that is.
If you have a pension earning spouse and your spouse passes away, you normally were
Correct.
not allowed their Social Security.
Correct. And yes, it benefits that piece as well.
Okay, moving on to item G, and that is the second reading of policies. Is there a motion? School Board Member Johnston?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move we approve the second reading of policy JKE, expulsion of students.
Second.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Johnston, second by School Board Member Truman. Any discussion on the policy? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff, excuse me.
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, that now takes us to item 13, and there is no other information this evening. Item 14, we moved executive session prior to the agenda. And item 15 is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
What about me?
Did I say Truman? I'm sorry. School Board Member Truman
Yes.
and School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to adjourn at 8:33. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.